Start by mixing 2 cups of flour swap with your baking powder and salt. Next, pour in 2 cups of hot water. Mix for a few minutes until you get a nice smooth batter. Let your dough rest for about 5 minutes. That 5-minute rest is going to allow the fiber to absorb the remaining moisture. After a 5-minute rest, take clean hands and do a quick knead for about 1 minute. You'll see the grain-free flour swap is going to be a little more dry and crumbly, but it'll still hold together well. Line a 9-inch cake pan with parchment paper, and then press your dough ball evenly into your parchment paper. This doesn't have to look pretty. Remember, we're just going to cut it up in cubes for our bread pudding. Now we're going to bake at 400 for 10 minutes. Turn the oven down, and we'll bake for an additional 25 minutes at 350. Notice the difference between the whole grain flour swap. You're going to have a moister dough. Again, you'll mix the wet and dry ingredients together and let the dough rest for about 5 minutes while that whole psyllium husk absorbs the excess moisture. And then we'll knead for 1 more minute. After your 5-minute rest, give it another quick knead. And now that that psyllium husk has absorbed all the moisture, you'll be left with a nice, more traditional looking ball of bread dough. And now we're going to just pack this in our parchment lined pan. This doesn't have to look pretty. We just need it to bake. Again, we bake at 400 degrees for 10 minutes. Then we're going to turn down the oven to 350 and bake for an additional 25 minutes. We'll make our custard by adding 2 egg swaps, 1 cup of plant milk, 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, 1/2 cup of flour swap, 1/2 cup of butter swap, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now we're going to blend until smooth for about 1 minute. To a small saucepan, we're going to add 1 cup of sugar swap, granular, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and about 1 teaspoon of allspice. Feel free to add ginger, cloves. I'm also going to add about 1/4 heaping teaspoon of ginger. Another option for your custard is to substitute a portion of brandy or dark rum for the milk portion. So I'm using 1/4 cup of rum and 3/4 cup of plant milk to total 1 cup of fluid. Now pour in your blended mixture of the egg swap, milk, and butter. Now we're going to boil on medium for about 5 minutes. Stir frequently. You'll see the mixture start to really thicken. And it only has to boil for about 5 minutes. It'll be nice and thick, ready to pour over our bread. Notice the difference in the flour swaps. Again, your loaves of bread don't have to look pretty. We're just going to cut them open and prepare our pudding. Cut your bread into 1-inch cubes. Grease a 9.5-inch pie pan well with olive oil or avocado oil. Then load your greased pie pan with your chunks of bread. My bread's still warm. I didn't even wait for it to completely get dry or even cool completely. So we're just throwing it right back in the oven. Now we're going to spoon our pudding mixture over the bread crusts. I gently fold my pudding mixture throughout all of my bread cubes. Make sure it's nice and well mixed before placing it in the oven at 350 degrees for 40 to 45 minutes. I'm going to top with a little more cinnamon before I throw it in the oven to bake. In my whole grain bread pudding, I'm also going to put 1 big apple shredded. Now, this bread pudding is going to have more healthy carbs, but otherwise you're still going to have lots of protein, fiber, and the flavor and texture will be delightful. So I'm just gonna fold this in my pudding mixture and cube up my bread and throw it in the oven. I'm also gonna add in some toasted pecans for nice added texture, flavor. And this bread pudding with the apples and pecans definitely reminds me of fall, but I'll eat it any time of year. I'm gonna top my whole grain, vegan, high fiber bread pudding with more toasted pecans, a little sprinkle of cinnamon. And this one, because it has the apples and the rum, I'm gonna bake about 45 to 50 minutes. While your pudding is still warm, make a simple glaze by adding about 2 tablespoons of butter swap into 1 cup of powdered sugar swap. And then we're slowly gonna add hot water a little bit at a time until we get a nice smooth consistency. I'm gonna pour my warm glaze over my bread pudding. Let it just settle into all the crevices. Yum. Yum. This is the best bread pudding I've ever had. So good.